Cross-examination of a second cell phone analyst continues today in the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial. Sergeant Moses Mabasa is the state's fifth witness to take the stand in the High Court in Pretoria. Yesterday, Mabasa testified about the incriminating photo evidence that he found on the phone of accused number 3, Mthobisi Mncube's phone. The phone was found on Mncube in 2015 when he was arrested for possession of a firearm. As I say, Linda Mnisi in studio to discuss these latest developments with us. Linda, good morning. Great to see you. Lots of cell phone evidence being heard in court lately.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that comes, or at least yesterday's testimony comes at the backdrop of Colonel Stein's evidence. You'll remember at some point the defense wanted to ask him about pictures that had been compiled by someone else, and he objected to being questioned about those pictures, saying that the person who compiled those pictures would come and testify about them. So yesterday, Sergeant Moses Mabasa taking to the stand to discuss what he was asked to do. So, 6 years down the line after Senzo Meyiwa's murder, he says he's given downloads to compile pictures as well as analyze the calls and SMSs. He took the court through...
That's 2020?
Yes, 2020.
Yeah.
So he took the court through those pictures that he had to analyze. And those pictures and downloads came from a cell phone that was owned by Mthobisi Mncube, and that phone was found in his possession in 2015 when he was arrested for a totally unrelated case. This was now a year after Senzo Meyiwa's murder. So what he was asked then to do was to compile a few pictures, and then, of course, he took the court through those pictures. And it's quite interesting because amongst the first few pictures, what you see is stacks, Michelle, stacks of 100 Rand notes and 200 Rand notes. And there it's written, it's labeled Impande Yesono, which essentially means the root of all evil. And then another stack of money, some of which is even in a plastic bag, also labeled Igugulezwe, the treasures of this world. You go on, what you see are pictures of him with other people. You also see pictures of, now, guns, firearms, high-caliber weapons, and one of them is labeled My Killing Machine. He's then asked to describe what the firearm looks like. This now, Sergeant Mabasa, being led by the state, asked, describe what you're seeing. What kind of firearm is this? And he says, well, this firearm that's labeled My Killing Machine is a silver and gold 9mm pistol. Goes on, another firearm is labeled Ishiyabazali, basically leaving the parents behind. And you find there, a rifle and other 9mm firearms. So the contents thereof are found in his phone. But most importantly, you'll remember there's been this thing about the description of someone who had dreadlocks. And you'll remember Colonel Stein also saying, in the pictures I was asked to see from Mncube's phone whether he had dreadlocks at the time Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Sergeant Mabasa comes to court and tells the court, well, there's a gentleman who has dreadlocks, he has an earring, in other pictures he's standing with his friends. There are other pictures of other people who had dreadlocks, but there's this one consistent picture that keeps showing up. And he was cross-examined. You would have heard yesterday Advocate Mnisi asking him about how were you able to tell that these are dreadlocks? Are you a hairstyle specialist? And that prompted the judge, obviously, to interject and kind of tell the defense to be fair to the witness. So he'll continue facing cross-examination today.
I mean, there's a lot of detail in there, and I suppose we'll learn the significance of that detail as the cross-examination continues, Linda. But the question does remain about the timing, right? If he was given this download of the cell phone to look at 5 years after the arrest of Mncube, 6 years after the murder of Senzo Meyiwa, given the downloads in 2020, why did it take so long?
Well, that's a question that's going to be answered perhaps if the state decides to call him by the investigator, Brigadier Geninda. But what Moses Mabasa told the court yesterday is that what he knows is that the downloads were done in 2015. So they took about 5 years between the downloads and giving them to him to analyze. And you'll remember there's been, a lot of public outcry, particularly around how long it's taken for this matter to be brought to finality. There's movements, and one of the people that at least a lot of people are hoping to hear from is the investigator in this matter, Brigadier Gininda, who will explain why exactly, it's taken so long, but also the methods that were used to obtain this kind of evidence, because it seems it's quite clear from the evidence of the analysts that they were given instructions. The request was, get these downloads, do this particular job, look at whether this person had, dreadlocks, to stain, look at whether there were links between the people in the house with the phone numbers that were received. What Colonel Steyn tells the court is that, Ntuli, who is accused number 5, who seemed to have called all the other accused as well as made contact with Kelly Khumalo, except for accused number 4, is said to have used that phone. Now, the issue around the ownership of that phone came under scrutiny.
Who was it recorded to?
Who was it recorded to? Who owned? And he says, well, what I know is that he used it, and we're able to establish that it made contact with Kelly Khumalo because Kelly's number was then put against other targets, for example, Senzo Meyiwa's number, as well as Zandi Khumalo's number. So they were able to establish there that this is Kelly's number, and this one was used. But the details then will come perhaps from Brigadier Gininda.
Yeah, absolutely. The ball is now firmly rolling, isn't it? Many, many years later.
Absolutely.
Linda Mnisi, thanks very much indeed for coming into studio. Of course, he'll continue to track the story as cross-examination continues in the High Court in Pretoria. It's all around the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial.